Enhanced COVID-19 measures are now in effect for Manchester. Between January 25 and February 8, curfew hours are between 7 p.m. and 5 a.m. daily. Public gatherings should not exceed 10 persons, and vending is only allowed between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. daily. While COVID-19 restriction measures have been tightened in Manchester, the rest of the island should still abide by the protocols established by the government. That means adhering to the 15-person public gathering limit, obeying the 10 p.m. curfew hours, wearing a mask in public spaces, and sanitizing hands. We are all in this together. Let's be smart, let's be responsible, let's limit the spread.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Monday, February 1, 2021. The Firearm Licensing Authority, FLA, has acquired 2 laser engraving marking machines, which will allow the agency to better trace firearms through special markings. The equipment, which value approximately $9,000 is financed by the Inter-American Development Bank through a broader $400,000 security strengthening project for the FLA. At the unveiling ceremony on Thursday, National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang said the FLA would use the equipment to mark weapons with an alphanumeric code that's unique to Jamaica. That code will identify the weapon's country of import, the importer, user, and year of importation.
Which means from now on, every licensed firearm in Jamaica will have a ID installed by laser, which means wherever it is found, we can know who was the original owner, who brought it in, and that it is in fact a licensed firearm in Jamaica. So the laser ID is a critical part of the FLA's tools to manage the firearm industry in Jamaica.
Dr. Chang says the FLA will begin the marking of civilian firearms, which will be mandatory under the new Firearms Act that is to be brought before Parliament in short order. Chief Executive Officer of the FLA, Shane Dalling, says the agency also has a bullet track machine which is able to test all bullets that have been fired by a licensed firearm.
All ballistic testing of firearms are uploaded immediately to the forensic unit, which assists the police in tracking firearms in terms of usage, illegal firearms, usage of firearms, crime scene investigation.
Meanwhile, the Firearms Licensing Authority, FLA, says it will now be accepting all applications and appeals online. The agency says it receives on average just over 3,000 applications per month, with a turnaround processing time of 6 months to 1 year. Chief Executive Officer Shane Dalling says the automated process means persons will be able to track their applications online.
Persons who drop off their application are immediately informed of their unique ID number to track the application online, and the system also sends an email to the applicant each time there's an update on your application.
He says that with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the online platform makes it easier to process applications while remaining socially distant. Turning to another matter, the Chief Executive Officer says that as the FLA conducts background checks and investigations on applicants, it also takes a careful approach to ensure there is a clear need for the firearm.
Even if you have a clean background, you must demonstrate to the FLA that you have a clear need for this firearm. So, as I stated before, just to say that there's a crime problem in Jamaica is not sufficient, because that would affect everyone. You have to show your particular need, your circumstances, which justify the need for that firearm.
100 beneficiaries are soon to benefit from a project aimed at developing and transitioning informal small farmers and fisherfolk to formal operators. This will commence on Thursday, February 4, with the signing of a $70,000 agreement between the Government of Jamaica and funding agency, the International Labour Organization, ILO. The project will be implemented jointly by the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries and the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce through its agency, the Jamaica Business Development Corporation. Support will be provided by the Rural Agricultural Development Authority, RADA. The project will include the provision of business development, support and capacity building training in the areas of business management, financial management, bookkeeping and market penetration. Participants will also be coached in identifying viable market opportunities, creating linkages with manufacturing or processing operations, tourism and service industries, as well as increasing their export potential. It is expected that the intervention provided by this project will improve the efficiency of small businesses, allowing participants to scale up their operations and eventually export to overseas markets. Prime Minister Andrew Holness is encouraging stakeholders in the tourism sector to use the downtime brought on by COVID-19 to make the necessary investments for rebranding their products and services and renovating facilities. This, he says, will allow for a smoother transition into full operation once the pandemic has subsided.
Now is the time to do all those physical changes to the plant that you couldn't do while you have guests in. Now is the time to imagine a new landscape and get it done. Because we know that we will either overcome the pandemic and put it behind us, or we will learn to live with the pandemic.
Prime Minister Holness was speaking at Red Stripe Experience's groundbreaking ceremony recently. He expressed optimism that the local economy would bounce back and urged local and foreign investors to make their move during this time.
Some commentators suggest that the rebound in travel and tourism post-pandemic will be much greater than is generally predicted as a result of huge pent-up demand. When the lockdowns are ended, people are going to want to just travel like crazy, and we want to be ready for them when they return to travel.
And finally, the National Works Agency, NWA, says repairs are now resuming on the West End roadway in Negril, Westmoreland. The work had been halted to allow for the replacement of faulty water lines beneath the road surface. The West End roadway project involves the construction of sidewalks at critical points along the corridor, repairs to sections of the road surface, and the construction of a boundary wall. Community Relations Officer for the NWA Western Region, Janelle Ricketts, says significant ground has been covered in terms of the construction of sidewalks and preparatory works to repair the targeted sections of the roadway. Emphasis will now be placed on completing the resurfacing of the roadway within the next 2 weeks. Works to construct a boundary wall and the remaining sidewalks will be completed by March 2021. The project is being completed at a cost of approximately $23.4 million and represents a joint venture between the NWA and Tourism Enhancement Fund, TEF. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
To properly carry out a hand rub, apply a palmful of the product in your cupped hand, covering all surfaces. Rub your hands palm to palm. Rub your right palm over the back of your left hand with interlaced fingers and vice versa. Rub your hands palm to palm with fingers interlaced. Rub the back of your fingers to opposing palms with fingers interlocked. Rotationally rub backwards and forwards the clasped fingers of your right hand in your left palm and vice versa. Once your hands are dry, they are now safe.
We invite you to be a part of government's 3 Million Trees initiative by planting a tree or two. Find out how to plant and maintain a tree in this next feature.
Trees are often considered the lungs of the earth. As part of their life cycle, they take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen into the atmosphere. Let's all continue this necessary part of keeping our planet healthy by planting more trees. And here's how you do it. First, things first. Decide what tree you will be planting. Is it one that will provide timber? Shade? Will it beautify your space or will you be eating its fruits? Once that's settled, you need to consider what kind of conditions it would need to grow. Naturally, some plants do better in some areas than others, while others need full exposure to sunlight versus those that can survive without direct light. And there's also the soil type to consider. Some trees thrive near seasides. Others prefer mountain areas, while certain trees are content in the valleys. Next up, space. Some trees grow wide, others tall. While you may be able to prune trees to keep them under control, some lose their essence when tamed. So, be sure to plant large trees in areas where they will have adequate space to grow. If you have a smaller space, consider growing a smaller tree that requires less pruning to keep it in check. Then there's the matter of your fully grown tree posing a threat to nearby structures. As a country situated in the hurricane belt, downed trees during times of disaster is a part of our reality. There's also the pesky issue of trees which shed their leaves profusely, and others with copious amounts of flowers and fruits, which might just be the cause of a dispute with your neighbor if planted near the fence. That being said, be sure to plant trees at a safe distance from walls, power lines, fences, sidewalks, and the very foundation of your house. Once you've considered all those tips, it's time to plant.
First step is to dig a hole, right? Not too deep, about a foot and a half, not too wide either, because you're not burying the plant. You're trying to provide a nice area for it to grow. Right? Upon digging your hole, if you notice that the soil type is clay, that is the kind of coarse soil type, you'd probably need topsoil, right? Because when you're putting back the soil, it's going to be a challenge for you. But after that, you dampen the soil, ensure that it's moist, provide a moist area or environment for the plant to be planted in. Ensure the plant is in the center of the hole. If you dig the hole a bit too deep, there's a process known as backfilling, right? That's when you put back the dirt into the soil to a certain height that is much favorable for you and for the plant. After you do that, you want to dampen the soil, right? Ensure the plant is in the center, because you end up having a plant to grow lean or to the side, because plants grow into the direction of the sunlight. Ensure that the soil goes up to the root collar. Now the root collar is where the stem and the root of the plant or the root plug meet, right? You don't want to go above that. Once you do finish that, you water it, then you stake it. When I say stake, you take either a bamboo stake or a regular stake, put a flagging tape beside onto it and put it beside the plant. That is you marking the plant. So once you're doing any maintenance, you yourself or any other individual in the area can know that, hey, there's something planted there.
Now more than ever, we have to find workable ways to resolve conflicts, particularly in the workplace. Get some tips next.
This sort of conflict is unhealthy for productivity in the workplace. You guys can't continue like this.
And she come in the morning and I'm trying to show her and she just acts like idiot.
Alright, so here what? I have a video from the Dispute Resolution Foundation that I think you guys need to watch. Come with me.
A conflict is is at its most fundamental a disagreement. Workplace conflict has a number of significant impacts. There's a cost to conflict at the workplace. So someone seeing a dispute between two employees or between employees and the employer being played out in public might be inconvenienced by what is happening, but they're unaware of what's the cost. There are all kinds of costs, from personal costs, health costs, reputational costs, to financial costs. So conflict can impact somebody at the workplace. It can impact the production and productivity of the business. If you think of it, any workplace could find that between a supervisor or just between two employees, there could be an unresolved conflict and it affects how they work. So if we have to work in a way that says your work is affecting mine and vice versa, and we're not getting along, then over time what will happen is that we tend not to be very productive because we're not communicating with each other, we're not responding, we're not engaged. So it affects the organization's relationship internally, it affects the dynamics of that, it affects productivity, it affects communication, it affects a number of things. So simple things like management decisions may be impacted by conflict at the workplace.
Mediation is very, very important in order to solve conflicts like these and to ensure that we have productivity.
Conflict resolution is a very broad term used to describe different approaches to try and manage conflict when conflict occurs. So mediation is just one of those processes, a very structured process in which a neutral third party who is trained helps disputing parties to come to a resolution of their dispute. Now, at the workplace, that will be helping them to negotiate. So they may be unable to negotiate by themselves, so they may get somebody who is external to each of them to help them to resolve that dispute, and that person would play the role of a mediator.
So guys, this is where I come in, to sit with you both and to discuss the issue further. But before we get to the meat of the matter, there is just one more point to note.
Now, in order to do that, the mediator has to have some very effective communication skills. So how does the mediator communicate? And communicate in a way that includes both verbal and non-verbal, but at the same time interpreting what is it that the verbal and non-verbal cues that are coming from the parties. What are those cues saying? So the mediator has to be very effective at communication. Now, helping the parties to communicate may be a part of the communication, the larger communication skills of the mediator. However, at a particular point in time, mediator has to help the parties to negotiate. So the mediator has to be au fait with what negotiation is about, how are the parties negotiating, and help them to be able to negotiate in a way that settles the dispute that they have.
Alright, so as you guys can see, conflict, it's not new. Today was probably the first for you guys, and it maybe won't be the last. But based on the video that you've just seen, you can now tell the true effect of what conflict can do within the organization. So you see, it's very important for you to practice mediation and proper conflict resolutions. Now, having seen or heard all of that, what really happened today?
Practice good hygiene by washing your hands frequently using soap and water. Here's how you should do it while conserving water. Turn on the tap to wet your hands, then turn off the pipe. Lather your hands and the tap with soap. Turn on the tap and wash your hands, back, front, and in between fingers. Use some of the water to wash off the tap, then turn it off. Dry your hands with disposable hand towels. If you don't have running water, use a hand rub containing 62% or more alcohol. If hand sanitizers are not available, rubbing alcohol, Dettol, white rum, or household bleach will do the trick. And if all else fails, let hand washing and the handling of potable water be a two-person event. Each person will take turns pouring and washing hands with sitting water.
Now is a good time to consider installing a tap on your containers to reduce the risk of water contamination. Faucets can be easily attached to drums, buckets, or 5-gallon water bottles. And to ensure that the outside of the containers are clean when recapping, disinfect it with hand rub containing alcohol that's 62% or more. The 5 R's of water conservation are also necessary to practice. Reduce water wastage by investing in water-saving devices. Reuse water at least twice before discarding. Replace leaking pipes, faucets, and other plumbing equipment. Recycle wastewater and use it for gardening, car washing, or cleaning of public spaces. And reclaim water through rainwater harvesting. We all must play our part to ensure there's water to combat the coronavirus and stave off prolonged drought.
Is your child or ward having learning challenges, particularly in reading and comprehension? Watch this next feature.
The Jamaica University College Child Assessment and Research in Education Center, a feat made possible by several major players, with renowned educator Professor Errol Miller leading the team, opened its doors in 1981 and over the years has grown to become the first point of contact in the diagnosis, evaluation, and treatment of children with special needs in Jamaica.
In 1975, the Ministry of Education mandated Jamaica College to educate and train teachers for special education. An advisory committee was set up by the college. The committee recommended that Jamaica establish a diagnostic and therapeutic center capable of diagnosing the learning problems of children with multiple disabilities and develop instructional prescriptions for teachers and parents. As psychologists, education specialists, and therapists began to provide services to students, they had to use tests from overseas. Many were not appropriate in content. The assessment of reading posed the greatest challenge. Reading is common to all areas. Students needed the test to be tested individually. The content of reading tests had to reflect the physical and social environments, as well as the lived experience of children.
First published in 1995, the Microdiagnostic Reading Test is an instrument for teachers, diagnosticians, or professionals designed to assess the reading skills of children. Assessment results from this instrument is further used to design educational plans to meet the individual learning needs of the child.
As societies change, more is learned from research and experience gained from practice. Instruments have to be updated, upgraded, and refined. Hence, the Microdiagnostic Reading Test of 2018.
So it's been a number of years since the first edition has been out. So this new version is an updated version in terms of the passages, in terms of the grade range that it covers, and in terms of the subtests that are involved. We're looking at a number of different aspects of reading. We're looking at a child's ability to distinguish sound in the words that they hear. We're looking at their decoding ability, their knowledge of sight words, reading fluency, and their understanding of what they're reading. One of the benefits of this new version, because we're looking at a number of different areas of reading, is that we can be much more targeted in the recommendations that we're creating for teachers and parents. So instead of just saying a child has a reading deficit, we can say maybe they need to learn more sight words, maybe they need to learn, pick up their fluency, maybe they need to target comprehension. So we can focus on the specific area of reading that they're having difficulty with instead of just saying they have a reading concern.
It's administered individually. There are 3 components. There's a sight word, non-words, and reading comprehension. It takes about roughly an hour to an hour and a half, depending on the level at which the child is at. It varies because most of the children already come with reading problems. They are also aware that they have reading problems. So some are nervous, some have anxiety issues. So it's where I come into play, where I have to do some form of encouragement, let them know that reason why they're doing this test, for me to know their strengths and their weaknesses so that I can help them moving forward. So after the test is completed, I go through and I score. So the test will now tell me the level at which the child is reading. So that also lets me prepare work packets, activities, worksheets, etc. for their level, for their specific reading need.
It helped me to read and answer story and answer a lot of questions.
The MDRT is currently used in a number of countries across the region. It's used in a number of classrooms. We have a number of teachers who come through to be trained on it so that they can pick up the reading challenges that they have in the classroom. So we expect that this new version will all similarly be used across the region.
The new Microdiagnostic Reading Test 2nd edition is now available. Contact the Microcare Center to register for one of our workshops at 876-929-7720-2 or by email at care_center@cwjamaica.com.
The new NIDS bill has been drafted and is ready for review. We want to hear from you. Go to www.japarliament.gov.jm to download a copy of the new bill. Join the conversation. Make a written submission to Clerk to the Houses, Gordon House, 81 Duke Street, Kingston, or via email clark@japarliament.gov.jm.
We have extended the time to the 15th of February.
Join the process. Let your voice be heard.
And that's where we close this chapter of Jamaica Magazine for today. We turn the pages tomorrow around about the same time, right here on this station. We are available at your convenience online. There's also our website, YouTube channel, and accounts on all the major social media platforms. You may also download our mobile app from your smartphone's app store. On behalf of the entire team here at the JIS, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.